So, today's video will be a little different, and I wanted to talk keyboard cables and why the one you're using might not be good enough for the Hall effect keyboard you have, and why you should consider options like the 1 of 0 cable or the Wooting coiled cables. And to clarify, the majority of straight USB-C cables should be adequate enough for Hall effect keyboards, and I will be primarily talking about coiled cables here today. You're going to hear the word cable a lot throughout this video, so if you feel so inclined, leave a little tally below how many times you hear it. With the rise in popularity of Hall effect keyboards, you may have noticed a lot of companies saying to use their own stock cable or to lower the brightness or RGB on your keyboard, and that's because they require a bit more power draw than your average mechanical keyboard in most cases. Now, there are some mechanical boards that this video will also apply to, such as keyboards with really bright underglow or tons of RGB throughout the board, keyboards with screens like the Angry Meow Cyberboard, etc. To simplify though, I will be mostly testing everything on my 60, ADHD, and Niagara 68, as these are the most popular Hall effect keyboards on the market currently. If you set up your 60AG, you probably noticed when you enable Tachyon mode, it brings up a little prompt saying that you shouldn't have full brightness enabled paired with Tachyon mode, unless you use their stock cable or their branded coil cable, and it completely removes the ability for you to use any animated lighting effects at all. With the added length that some coil cables provide, and the Lemo connector that we would normally call Aviator, or even some cheap straight cables, they may have some data input loss or just overall lack of good power draw. And with Hall effect in particular, this can cause a ton of issues as each key can be configured to do multiple inputs with just one press, so you want to have as much headroom as possible with power draw. For example, with the ACO HE, if you enable their performance settings and have RGB at max brightness, it causes a ton of issues in CS2 in particular with how the game handles mouse and keyboard inputs. When strafing with A and D, the game will bug out if you try to aim and hold either of these two keys at the same time, and cause stutters with movement and your mouse input and tracking. But the cables designed for HE boards like 1 of 0's, this issue is entirely gone with my testing. The way that Wooting and 1 of 0 handle the fix for this are both different. 1 of 0, instead of using a Lemo connector like we would see on Aviator cables, 1 of 0 has opted to use a USB-C to C adapter and then has adapter rings to look like traditional Lemo connectors, but are different internally. And then Wooting uses something akin to the traditional Lemo connector, but it isn't quite the same, and they use higher quality materials than the average coiled cable, as well as a USB-C to USB-C with an A adapter that goes into your PC. And with the changes these two cables provide, it provides better data input and power draw than the average coiled cable can. 1 of 0's also has the option to use it as a straight cable configuration if you want, and between the two cables they both have this option. Between the two cables they feature similar quality and tolerances, with the 1 of 0 cable having a slightly thicker cable overall. And the prior mentioned issues were even more prevalent with keyboards that have higher pulling rates like the Wooting ADG, and specifically with the ADG, even though it says it's in the software at 100% brightness and Tachyon mode enabled, in person, the brightness is visibly dimmer with a cheaper coiled cable than if you were to use a higher quality cable meant for Hall effect. I'm sure there are other quality coiled cable options, but for now, these are the only two that are on my radar, and if you have any other suggestions, leave them down below for others to feed.